Okay, gentlemen, I'm starting the learning sponsors while you finish up the financials. Sarah Alpert in memory. Shh. B'sheket. Sarah Alpert in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel. Bella David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu ben Yosef Cohen. Friends of Honey Chaifetz, Tana Shoshana Bad Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shulamit Bad Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judy Cohen, Judith Liba Bad Moshe. Friends of Dr. Annette Safransky, Hannah Bat Ephraim Fischel. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushkish Prince Bad Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan ben Moshe Eliezer Bechana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Kalevi Betzipora, Isri ben Yoel Moshe HaKohen Bechana. Benny, can you get me a cup of water, please? Friends of Linda Katz, Hinda Bat Yoshua, and Lee and Harvey Greenberg, in memory of their parents, Esther Bat Eliezer, Yaakov Yosef ben Avraham, Sarah Rivka Bat Baruch Yehuda, Betzal ben Avraham Alevi. Friends of Rochelle Ebner, Rachel Bat Moshe, Icon Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister, Dr. Phyllis Pacheco, Lifshter Bat Isser. Steve and Eileen Greenberg, in memory of his father, Chaim ben Shmuel Halevi. A month of learning, Harry and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bat Yehuda Leib. Tova and Leori Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Henya Bat Reb Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Judith and Michael Poretsky, in memory of her father, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Hersh Feivel. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his sister, Golda Leah Bat David Halevi, and his mother, Malka Bat Baruch. Thank you. B. Pizer, in memory of her husband, Harav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Ira Grubert, in memory of his father, Shmuel Yitzchak ben Zev Yekutiel. As students of Rabbi Yisrael Leib, Ed Kurtzer, in appreciation of 17 years of dedication as Magid Shir of Daf Yomi. I haven't reached that yet. Okay? A day of learning today, Sunday the 9th, by Francine Kane, in memory of her brother, Yoel ben Nassan Yehuda, as well as by Marilyn and Roy Barth, in memory of her father, Natan ben Simcha. May Neshamas have an aliyah, crank Rafia, Velti Yeshir, Shematzleach, Chol ben Israel, a good Gaban Shia. Only a bit Okay, gentlemen, today is an X-rated Gemara. What? Okay. Basically, the Gemara. I'm going to tell you. Basically, the Gemara is going to attempt to finish up the discussion, okay, of whether or not the Gemara is dealing with the phrase in terms of whether the prohibition of the punishment of death penalty in terms of relation to a woman who is either the condemns mother, or the condemns mother married to his father, or a woman that happens to be married with his father, to his father. Okay, okay, or generally, basically, okay? From there, Gemara is going to other areas of skila, okay, to clarify, and those happen to be areas of sodomy, okay, or basically male homosexuality, and also bestiality. Okay, so we're not going to go into details, all right, but just to pick up, I would like us to go back to Nun Gimel, Amud Bet, 4 lines for the bottom of Amud Beis, on Nun Gimel Amud Bet, the middle of the line. Okay, so Nun Gimel Amud Beis towards the bottom. Okay, 4 lines from the bottom. Right. Okay. Basically, the I'm going to answer this way, Heshi, very short and to fix. The Masorah has the requirement Peru or Vu is basically focused on the male. Okay? Given that basis, okay, any example, as early as examples given in the Torah, as with onen, okay, and that's where they get the term onanism, okay, in English, okay, spilling one's seed inappropriately, okay, as a result, therefore, the crime, if I can use that term, is on the committing act with a male. Okay, whether it's male homosexuality, whether it's a male with an animal, things like that. Okay. On the other hand, the only example with women may be the question of a woman with an animal. Okay? But a woman with another woman is not a deraisa, it's a derabba. Okay? All right. Ella Amar Rava. Okay, as I said, I'm on Nun Bet, Amud Beis, Nun Gimel, Amud Beis, okay, 4 lines from the bottom. I want to pick up there because Rav is giving his explanation, and unless we review that, we're going to... So, Ella Amar Rava says, Rava, Kasavar Rabbi Yoshua, he's saying that Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion, what? That when the Torah talks about Ervat Avicha, then, quote, nakedness of one's father, what's it really talking about? Zo Eshet Avicha. It's talking about the wife of one's father. Umayte la b'gzera shava. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda is going to be able to bring this and use a gzera shava for the punishment of skila, okay, based on Ov O Yedoni that we saw and we talked about originally. Umashma bein Eshet Aviv shehi imo, and therefore, whether it is a sexual liaison with the, okay, Eshet Aviv, whether it's the wife of his father who is his mother, bein Eshet Aviv naimo, or it's the wife of his father who is not his mother, okay, imo she'ina Eshet Aviv minayin. How then do we know then if we saw those two connected, then what about the fact that his having a sexual liaison with his mother who is not the wife of his father? How do we know that that also would be punishable by the stoning death penalty? We're going to see. Hold on. Talmud Lomar, says the text, right? Ervat imcha, we learn it based on the fact that, in other words, that the pasuk says the nakedness of your mother, lo tegaleh. Okay? So that prohibition is a clear prohibition, a clear isur, and as a result, we do not have any statement in that pasuk that it talks about being the wife of somebody. Okay? And right? Imcha he. It is your mother. So the implication would be from that, okay, Rabbi Yehuda could derive the fact that having relations with your mother, regardless of whether the woman is married to your father or not, would also get punishable by the death penalty of skila. Mishum imo, okay, ata mechayvo. And therefore, because of the issue of incest, in a sense, in that case, he would be held guilty. And you would not then add, in addition, okay, the offense of doing of liaison with the wife of his father. Okay, now we can go. Having seen that Rava is attempting to explain Rabbi Yehuda and present us with a viable view, what happens? Okay? Of course.
If he's a shogeg and his mother's unmarried,
Okay. That would be
not
the
according to Rabbi Yehuda, but
We'll
according
see.
to the Rabbana.
Gemara is going to come back and have to deal with that. It's going to make the suggestion And then we're going to see, is everybody acceptable to that or not? Okay. All right, so we're on the top of Nun Dalet, today's daf, right? Tanya Kavate de Rava. And we have a bright that seems to support the explanation that Rava has given us for Rebbe Yehuda. Ish, okay, Prat Katan, a man with the exception of a minor. Asher Yishkav et Eshet Aviv, okay, and therefore we had, by the way, the pasuk being in full, the Ish Asher Yishkav et Eshet Aviv, okay, Ervat Aviv Gila, Mot Yumatu Shnehem Demehem Bam. That's our pasuk from Vayikra 20, verse 11. Okay, so what happens, right? Asher Yishkav et Eshet Aviv, one who lies with the wife of his father. Mashma ben Eshet Aviv shehi imo, regardless, says the Gemara, of if it's the wife of his father, his mother, ben Eshet Aviv lo imo, or whether it's the wife of his father and she's not his mother. Let's call it for the moment a stepmother. Imo she'ena eshet aviv. If it's simply a liaison with his mother who isn't the wife of his father, minayin, how do we know then that there too, that such a liaison would be punishable with the skila death penalty? Talmud Lomar, says the Gemara, Ervat aviv gila. Okay, that is part of the pasuk. Okay, Eish Aviv, Ervat Aviv Gila, citing the pasuk exactly. So what happens there? Okay, Mufna, that phrase then is available, lahakish, to make the association, v'ladun mimenu gzera shava, and to derive it, okay, the language there, okay, in order to produce a gzera shava, word bridge. Mot yumatu, okay, the pasuk says, right? What happens at then at the end of the pasuk? Mot yumatu shnehem demehem bam. So I make this word bridge gzeira shava with the words mot yumatu. We've had that before. Okay, how do we know that? Okay, because when the pasuk of ov and yidoni, okay, the word, the pasuk ended, Mot Yumatu, Be'even Yigamu Otam, Demehem Bam. That was pasuk number 2027. Okay, so we're making between pasuk 11 in that parak to pasuk 27 in that parak, okay, the word bridge, the Gezerah Shavah. All right, so what happens? Let's go on. Ata omer b'skila. Do you say then that on that basis the punishment, the death penalty is skila? O eno ela be'achad mikol mitot ha'amurot b'Torah. Or maybe it's one of the other death penalties referred to in the Torah. Ne'emar kan d'mehem bam, since it says here their blood, right? Okay. V'ne'emar ba'ov v'yidoni. I just read that to you, pasuk to you. D'mehem bam. Okay, again, all right, there too, the same language. Mala halen b'skila, the same way there it is punished by skila. Afkan b'skila, so here, okay, it is punished by skila. So Gemara now picks up, wait a second, we all know that it's one thing to give the punishment, but it's also another thing that what do we need? To have, we got to have the hatra, got to have the warning. So what happens? Onish shamanu, says the Gemara. Okay, azhara minayin. What then is the basis? Okay, to indicate where do we find it? Talmud lomar, says our pasuk. Ervat avicha lo tigaleh. That's our pasuk. All right, that we said just cited. V'ish asher yishkavet eshet aviv. Ervat aviv gilah. Right, and we have a pasuk elsewhere. Okay, that says. Right? That. Ervat avicha lo tigaleh. Ervat avicha. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Zo eshet avicha. That means that refers to the wife of the husband. Okay? Now, this would be proof that Rav then's explanation, okay, of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Ata omer eishet avicha. You say that that refers to the wife of the husband. O eno ela ervat avicha mamash. Or are we talking about his own nakedness? Okay, in other words, sodomy of the father. Right? Okay. Ata omer eishet, right? Or Nemar kan ervat avicha lo tigale. But our pasuk says the nakedness of your father you should not reveal. V'nemar lahalan, and elsewhere it says ervat aviv gila. Okay, the nakedness of his father he revealed. Ma lahalan beishut hakatuv medaber. The same way there in that case, it's talking about marriage. That's what the pasuk is talking about. Kan beishut hakatuv medaber. So likewise here, we understand that it's referring to the situation of marriage, and therefore umashma. And what is it therefore implying? Ben ishat aviv shehi imo. Regardless if it's the wife of his father that is his mother, okay? Ben Eshet Aviv She'ina Imo, okay? Or the wife of the father that is not his mother. However, now we come back to our third option. Imo She'ina Eshet Aviv, okay? Minayan, the wife of his father, okay? The wife who is the mother, the mother, okay, who is not the wife of his father. How do we know that a liaison with her would then also get skila punishment? Talmud Lomar says the pasuk, ervat imcha lo tigale. Okay, that the nakedness of your mother you should not reveal. Ein li ele bahazhara. I therefore only have a warning. She'asaha katuv imo she'ena eshet aviv. All right? I don't have that. It only implies then that that warning may be applicable to a situation where the talk of where the language of the pasuk is his mother, who is not the wife of his father. Ki imo shehi eshet aviv, like making it a parallel to the mother who is the wife of his father. Onesh minayim. How do we get the punishment phase in that situation? Ne'emar kan, it's written here. So we say here, ervat avicha lo tigaleh. The nakedness of the father you should not reveal. V'ne'emar lahalan, and it says otherwise elsewhere, ervat aviv gila. Okay, that the nakedness of the father was revealed. Ma bahazhara asaha katuv. The same way now with the warning, the text tells us, imo she'ena eshet aviv, ki imo shehi eshet aviv. Okay, that his mother, who is not the wife of his father, is similar then to the wife, to the mother who is the wife's father. Onish. So likewise, with regards to punishment, okay, asaha katuv, the Torah text therefore institutes that the following, imo she'ena eshet aviv, that his mother, who is not the wife of his father, ke'imo shehi eshet aviv, is like his mother, who is the wife of his father. Imchahi, okay, it says your mother, who she is, right? What happens? Mishum imo atam mechayvo. And therefore here too, his mother, therefore you would be considered guilty. Ve'i ata mechayvo, but you would not consider him guilty, mishum eshet av. But you would not consider him guilty based on an offense, in that case, of sexual liaison with the wife of his father. So therefore, we're talking about one offense and not v'Rabbanan. So fine, that explained Rabbi Yehuda's view. What about the view of the rabbis? Okay, given all these psukim, how do they interpret these psukim? As we go on, namely for the Rabbanan, where the pasuk said, "Ervat avicha mamash," they understood it as sodomy with the father. Okay? Hi, but in regarding to this, all right, what happens? We have a pasuk that says, "V'zot zachar nafka." I could have said that the punishment for that, I didn't have to derive it from Ervat Avichamam, okay? From a drash of Rabbanan. I could derive it directly from a pasuk that clearly prohibits relations with a male. That's the point, says the Gemara. Okay? L'chayev alav shtayim. And in that case, I would say he's committed two offenses, okay? Both of which would be subject to skila death penalty. Ukidarav Yehuda. And that would be similar to the view of Rav Yehuda. Da'amar Rav Yehuda, who says as follows in another case, using the word nachri here as a euphemism for a Yisrael. Okay? Haba al aviv, what happens? Chayav shtayim, okay, would be subject to having done two offenses and would be punishable with two penalties. Haba al achi avi, and one who has relations with his uncle, chayav shtayim, also would be subject to two offenses. Okay? Amar, says the Gemara, Rava, what does he does? Mistabra milta. Okay, it seems logical, he says, Rav Yehuda, with regarding this view of Rabbi Yehuda. Be Yisrael b'shogeg u'b'korban, Bob. There's your comment, okay? That what happened was, it was accidental, and then he would have to bring a korban of a chatas. Okay, and if you were going to say that it was two offenses, you have to bring two chatas. Okay, all right. Now we can pick up. V'hai dekamar nachri, and the fact that he used the euphemism nachri for Yisrael, lishnema alihu. Okay, the Gemara tells us this is really euphemistic language. The Isa Gadatach Nachri Mamash, because were you to think he was actually referring to an actual Gentile, Dino Mainihu, what then, what law would it be? Or how could we make any sort of logical determination? Katla, it would simply be a death penalty. Betray katle, katatle? You're saying you would able be to carry out two death sentences on the same person? You can't kill him twice, right? Tanya namihachi, and we have a baita. Ba'aviv, who was a sexual liaison with his father, chayav shayim, okay, is guilty of two offenses. Ba'alachiyaviv, one who has a sexual liaison with his uncle, chayav shtayim, is again subject to two offenses, two penalties. Ika da'amri, and there are those who say, Loka Rabbi Yehuda. But that's not the view of Rabbi Yehuda. The Ika da'amri, afila tema Rabbi Yehuda. And there are those that say, no, you could apply this still to the viewpoint of Rabbi Yehuda. Umayte la b'kal v'chomer me'achi aviv. And maybe you could bring it based on a kal v'chomer, okay, from the uncle situation. Namely, right? Exactly. Okay, namely, ma'achi aviv, the karva da aviv. Whereas the uncle of the, okay, who is a relative of the father, who chayav shtayim, he would be guilty of two offenses. Aviv lo kol shekain. But the father, how much more so? Ukamiflage beplugda da bai v'rabba. And this argument is similar to another argument we find between Abaye and Rava, namely the following. Mar Savar on Shim min Hadin. One is of the opinion that you can bring about punishment based on a determination developed through a Kal V'chomer. Okay? Umar Savar Einon Shin min Hadin. And the other holds that you cannot bring about a punishment of somebody simply based on the logical progression of a Kal V'chomer.
Because it's not a Masorah.
Okay, all right. It's not a clear right statement. Okay. V'Rabbanan, and as far as the rabbis go, Hasara le'eshet aviv minala. Now we come back. What about the fact of the prohibition, warning in terms of the wife of the father? Where do we derive that? Question mark. Nafka laho me'ed. Okay, we learn it from the following. Me'ervat eshet avicha lo tigaleh. From the fact that the pasuk had said, okay, the nakedness of the father's wife, you should not reveal. Rabbi Yehuda, and as far as Rabbi Yehuda goes, hahu mibayale lahazara laeshet aviv laachar mita. He needs that pasuk in order to darshan a warning of the same prohibition for the wife of one's husband of his father after the death of the father. In other words, the widow.
She's a widow. She's no longer living.
Okay, all right. After the father's death. Okay. The Rabbanan and the rabbis, right? Hahu misefa dekra nafka. They derive it out of a different part of the pasuk. Okay, namely, it says ervat avichahi. Okay, all right. So therefore, it says the nakedness of your father. The Rabbi Yehuda, hahu mibayale mishum eshet av. Okay, he requires that darshan to drash it. Okay, in order because of the wife of the father. Ata mechayvo, that then you would still find him guilty. Ve'iyata mechayvo mishum eshet ish, but you wouldn't find him guilty of the death penalty of skila on the offense of relations with the wife of a man. Vaha'anantana. But we teach the following in a Mishnah. Haba al eshet av, one who has relations with the wife of his father, chayav aleh mishum eshet av, would be guilty due to the prohibition of, relations with the wife of the father, mishum eshet ish, as well as because of relations with a married woman. Bein b'chaye av, regardless if it's during the life of the father, bein la'achar mitata av, or it's after the death of the father. V'lo palig Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda does not argue with this position of Rabbanan. So, now Amar Abaye comes back and tries to say to us, palig b'braita. No, Rabbi Yehuda does argue with the Braita, okay, as opposed to in the Mishnah. Okay, V'Rabbanan, and as far as the rabbis, onesh the eshet aviv la'achar mita minalo. And regarding the saying that there's a punishment, okay, for having relations with the wife of his father, the woman now, after the death of the father, in other words, the widow, okay, minalaho, on what's this based? Bish lema Rabbi Yehuda. This, we understand, is a view of Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Right? Following Rabbi Yehuda. Because he brings it from this word bridge of Gezerah Shava, okay, which we saw basically used to mayhem bomb. Okay? Ela rather Rabbanan. Minalahu. Where do they derive it? Amrela. They could say to you, Hahu, we derive it from the pasuk, Ervat Aviv Gila, that he revealed the nakedness of the father. Demafik Rabbi Yehuda l'gzera shava, mafke le inhu laonish de eshut aviv la'achar mita. Okay, that since Rabbi Yehuda derives it based on the gezera shava, okay, he also can derive it from, right, mafik le inhu, right, laonesh as the punishment, right, of the Eshet Aviv, the wife of his father, after death. V'Rabbanan, whereas the rabbis, what happened there? Onesh le'imo she'ena Eshet Aviv. The punishment is for the mother, who is not the wife of his father. Minale, where is that derived? Amar Rav Shisha, says Rav Shisha, Berei de Rav Idi Amar Kra, basing it on a pasuk. Imcha hi. Okay, that was the end of that pasuk that we cited. It's your mother. Asa'aha katub. Why is that included in there in the pasuk, he says? Le'imo sheina eshet aviv. Okay, making the mother, okay, his mother, who's not the wife of his father, parallel ki imo shehi eshet aviv, to the wife, the mother, who is the wife of his father. Okay? And that completes that part of the discussion. Okay, we now get to a new piece, a new reference from the Mishnah. And the Mishnah said, after discussing that whole item, those were the first two phrases of the Mishnah. The next one says the prohibition about relations with one's daughter-in-law. Okay? So as we pick up now, okay, we're going to continue the following. Okay? By the way, notice how much shorter this discussion is going to be, right, compared to the earlier one we've just been through.
This time we're only wondering, is it 2 or 3?
Exactly. Okay?
So it just has to answer
we'll
that.
see. Right. Okay, so what happens? All right? And I'm going to phrase it a little differently than Michael just did, but he's correct in his point. Do we say that there's only one offense here? Well, I'll get to it. Hold on. Do we say that there's only one offense, namely the, so to speak, incestual offense, the father-in-law with the daughter-in-law? Or could I argue that there are actually two offenses here? One is the father-in-law to daughter-in-law, but the other is that she's a life of a married woman. So I could argue that there's two different offenses, right? So that's the point I want. Well, we'll get to it. That's another question that we don't get to here yet. Okay? All right, you're jumping way ahead. All right, haba'al falato. Okay, everybody find the place? Okay. Ulechayev nami mishum eshud b'no. So now the Gemara says, wait a second. If you said, I clearly won, and maybe two, could it possibly even be a third? Namely, now we bring in that fact that it was the wife of his son. Okay? Amar Abaye. Okay, patacha katub b'kalato. Okay, the text began its discussion regarding his daughter-in-law. Excuse me. V'siyem be'eshet bano. And it concludes with a reference to the wife of his son. Lomar lecha, in order to tell you, zohi kalato, that is his daughter-in-law. Zohi eshet bano, that she is the wife of his son. Okay?
The definition of the word kala is wife of his
Son. Okay, so it could be implying then that it's only two offenses and not three. Okay? All right, we come now to a new Mishnah. Okay? Okay. All right. So as I indicated, okay, right, we've already seen that the Gemara raised earlier in the today's daf that you have a pasuk that clearly prohibits male homosexuality. Okay, and I suggested to you why I thought at least that was the concept. Haba'al hazachor, one who has relations with a male, va'al habehema, or with an animal. Okay, va'ha'isha hamivia et hahema, or a woman who has relations with an animal. Baskila would all be punishable with the death penalty of stone. Okay, im adam. Okay, right? Im adam chata. If the man sins, behema mab chata. What sin did the animal commit? Asks the Gemara. This is still the Mishnah, by the way. Remember, ela lafi shaba'a la'adam tkala al yada. Okay? Since there came this, I'm going to use the two words, calamity or downfall came upon this person. Okay? All right? Because of this animal. Laficha marakatuv to sakel. And for that reason, the pasuk says the animal is to be stoned as well. Or another possibility. Why? So that this animal won't be visible in the marketplace, right, around town, all right? And people will say, because of that animal, so-and-so got physical.
Striking that on the one hand you have this statement, and on the other hand, when it comes to killing an animal, you've got to bring a full court of 20 people. So, right? How do you reconcile this? This is all about how people are going to enter the street.
Because the idea is, if you did, in the second opinion, the idea is if you allow the animal to remain alive, the story of Harry and the Hound will continually be raised among the people. So we want to get it over with and get it forgotten. So the best way to do that is to get rid of the animal as well, so it will not be a reminder to people.
Okay.
Why not? The social good trumps the life of
the
an
animal.
animal, and if it's a kosher animal, be shefted anyway later. Except here it's asur b'hanor.
Since the animal is not guilty, why not give it to the least?
Because their pasuk says that if barring special circumstances,
Right.
like a bas kohen, the punishment to each party in an illicit sexual act
Is
is
stoning.
the same.
Right? That's the basic
So
punishment under
automatically,
those
if the guy
circumstances.
gets stealer, the animal gets stealer. The only real exception is a bas
Daughter of
kohen
Cohen.
with a man, a married bas kohen or an arusas bas kohen, married to a man. She gets stealer, he gets
That's-
ten.
He gets
Or
lighter
Sure,
sentence.
that's
Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, let's go on with the Gemara now, please. Nun Dalid, all right, about 5 lines from the bottom. Zachar minalan, on the prohibition for the male. Tatanu Rabbanan, ish prat v'katan. A male, adult, not excluding a minor. Asher yishkav et zachar, again, citing the pasuk there. Bein gadol, bein katan. Regardless if it's an older or if it's a younger. Mishkaveh isha, and the pasuk said here, okay, notice the mishkaveh is the plural form, all right? Magidlach will tell you, hakatuv, sheshnei mishkavot ba'isha. There are 2 different varieties of sexual liaisons, okay? Amar Rabbi Yishmael, he says, Harei ze ba lelamed, v'ninsa lamed. Okay, comes to teach us and we learn. Mot yumatu b'skila. Okay, that they would die by death penalty of stoning. Ata omer b'skila, o eno ela be'echad mikol mitot ha'amurot b'Torah. Or do we say it's one of the other death penalties defined by the Torah? Ne'amar, right? However, ne'amar kan d'mehem bam, we bring in our gezerah shava again, right? That tongue, v'ne'amar ba'o v'yedoni d'mehem bam. Okay, so we saw there it spelled out skila as penalty. We use the same thing. Malahalan b'skila, so the same way there, skila, afkan skila. So we see there. Okay, and so what happens? If someone wants more details on that, see me at the end of this year. Okay? Okay. Okay. No, I have a story that will explain it. Okay? Onesh shamu. Okay. Say, we've learned then the punishment. As haraminayan, where's the warning? Right? Talmud Lomar says the text. Ve'et zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha toevahi. The pasuk citing and spelling it out in detail. Lamadnu azhara l'shochev, says the Gemara. Hold on a second. This teaches us a warning for the one who is the, I'm going to use the word initiator, proactive part. Azhara l'nishkav minayin, the warning for the one who is the, I'm going to say, somewhat passive partner. How do we know this? Talmud Lomar, says the text, lo yiyeh kadesh mi b'nei Yisrael. Because we have another pasuk in Devarim that spells out that you should not have any, I'm going to use the rough translation, any male prostitutes, okay, among the Jewish people. Ve'omer, and it says another pasuk, v'gam kadesh haya be'eretz asuk b'chol hatorot hagarim asher horish v'gomer. Okay, saying again, citing another pasuk that they allowed for male, okay, prostitution, okay, thus performing all of the abominations that the neighboring Gentiles did in the land.
No, the ones
Okay,
that were
Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, that was his explanation. Okay, another time we can discuss Canaanite practices. Rabbi Akiva Omer, says Rabbi Akiva, Eino tzarich, you don't even have to do a drasha. Hu Omer, why? Because he could say the pasuk and read the pasuk this way. Ve'et zachar lo tishkav mishkavei isha kare be lo tishachev. Okay, read the pasuk. In other words, just change the nikud of the pasuk. Okay, all right, and you would have a way of darshan having it. Behema minalan. How do we know about the prohibition with regards to bestiality? The Tanu Rabbanan, because here too the rabbis taught as follows in a Braita: Ish prat lekatan, a male, adult male, with the exception of a minor. Okay, asher yitain shchavto b'vehema. Okay, relations to the animal. Bein gdola, bein ktana, whether it's an older or a younger animal. Mot yumat, should put to death, biskila, with the stoning. Ata omer biskila, you say it's by death stoning. Oh, eno ela be'achat mikol mitot ha'amurot b'Torah. Maybe it's by one of the other death penalties. Ne'amar kan tahargu, it says here, should be taharogu, should be put to death. But ne'amar lahalan, and elsewhere it says, ki harog targenu. There too, it's clearly death penalty. Malahalan b'skila, the same way here it's skila. Afkan b'skila. So there it's skila, so here too it's skila. Lamadnu onesh l'shochei, and therefore we've learned a punishment for the active individual. Onesh l'mishkav, a punishment for the somewhat passive minalan. What's the basis? Talmud Lomar, again says the pasuk, kol shochev im behema mot yumat, should certainly be put to death. Okay, And therefore we learn, have a concept that the Rabbanan have developed. If it doesn't directly apply the law to the proactive individual, Tanehu inyan lenishkav, teach it to the
Totally unnecessary.
right, right, to the less active. Lamadnu onish. Therefore, we now have learned the punishment. Bein l'shochev, bein l'mishkav, regardless if it's the more active or passive participant. Azhara minayin. Where do we learn the warning? Talmud Lomar, says the pasuk. Uvecho behema lo titecha l'tam abba. We have a clear pasuk that tells us that. Okay? Namely, lamadnu ashara l'shochev. Here we say we've learned warning for the participant. L'nishkav minayin, for the more passive. Okay, remember that was the third example in our Mishnah. Okay, how do we know? Talmud Lomar, says the pasuk, lo yihiyeh kadesh mibnei Yisrael. There should not be a male prostitute again among the Jewish men. Va'omer, and a pasuk says, gam kadesh haya ba'aretz v'gomer. Okay, divrei Rabbi Yishmael. That was Rabbi Yishmael's explanation. Okay, Rabbi Akiva Omer, again, same thing. Eino tzarich, we don't need a drasha. Hare hu Omer, it says clearly in the pasuk. Okay, lo titain shechavtacha. Okay, that's the part of the pasuk. Lo titain shechivatcha. Okay, he just does a little spin on the wording of the pasuk. Now, okay, coming back now to our directly topic. Haba al hazachor. Okay, vehevi elav zachor. Okay, what about clearly this is again dealing with a situation. All right, what happens? Amar Rabbi Abba. Okay, ledivre Rabbi Yishmael. According to Rabbi Yishmael, chayav shtayim. Okay, in that situation, there would be two offenses. Chada milo tishkav. One, because we have a pasuk, remember, that says you should not have sexual liaison. V'chada milo yihiyeh kadesh. And one, because another pasuk says you should not have such male activities there. Okay, ledivre Rabbi Akiva. That's based on the view of Rabbi Akiva. Okay, eino chayav ela achad. Right. That according to Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, it is really only a single offense, namely lo tishkav, that you should not have such a sexual relation. Okay? Lo tishkav chadahi. Lo tishachev, right. Lo tishachev, I got to see my nikud. I did. Okay? I put it in pencil there. Lo tishachev, okay, that it should not, right? Okay, that is one, a single offense. Haba'al habehema, one who has relations with the animal. Vehevi b'mehema alav, or brought the animal on him. Amar Rabbi Abahu, says Rabbi Abahu, ledivre Rabbi Yishmael, according to the view of Rabbi Yishmael, chayav shtayim, would have committed two separate offenses. Chada milo titain shechavtecha, one based on the pasuk that you should not have the sexual liaison. V'chada milo yihiyeh kadesh, and one prohibiting acting as a male prostitute. Ledivre Rabbi Akiva, however, according to the view of Rabbi Akiva, eino chayav ela echad, he's only again subject to one offense. Shechavtecha ushchivatcha chadahi. It is one act. Excuse me. One act. Uh-huh. Maybe two separate isurim. It could be two separate isurim, but as a single
What's a
act.
Each
giver
person
once
does
again?
only one thing.
Okay. Okay.
But you only do a one act with an animal.
Right.
Other.
Abaye Amar, says Abaye, afilu l'divrei Rabbi Yishmael, nami eno chayav ela echad. According to Abaye, no, even according to Rabbi Yishmael's view, one could argue that it is only a single offense. The chikativ, because when it's written, lo yihye kadesh begavre kativ, that prohibition is really only applying to relations to a human and not to an animal. Okay? Ela Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, but rather for Rabbi Yishmael, Hazara l'nishkav, a warning for the passive individual minale. On what is it based? Nafkale. He derives it from a part of the pasuk. Mikol shochev im behema motumat. One who lies with the animal put to death. Im eno enyan l'shochev. Okay, if it's not one for the active partner, okay, tanehu inyan l'mishkav, teach it for the more passive individual. Va'afke rachmana l'mishkav b'lashon shochev, and the Torah could derive the issue regarding the passive individual based on the language of the active one. Ma shochev anash v'his here. The same way the active individual is punished and warned, af nishkav anash v'his here. So likewise, the passive individual, okay, the one who is, so to speak, sodomized, is punished and warned. Okay, now we go on. Hanir ba, okay, one who is sodomized. L'zachar v'hanir ba lebehema. Okay, in this situation, right? What are we talking about? Amar Rabbi Abahu. Okay, and remember this is considered in one single act, one awareness. Amar Rabbi Abahu, he argues, L'divrei Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, in this view, Chayiv Shtayim, two offenses. Chada milo tishkav, one based on the pasuk that you don't lie. The chada milo titain shechavtecha, and one based on another pasuk as well. Right? L'divrei Rabbi Yishmael, that's the view of Rabbi Yishmael, and chayav ela echad, would only be subject to one offense. Aidi va'aidi lo hiyeh kadeshu. Okay, based on the fact that in both those situations we have a pasuk that says you should not act in as a male recipient, prostitute. Abai Amar, says Abai, afilu l'divrei Rabbi Yishmael, even according to the view of Rabbi Yishmael, nami chayav shtayim, would also still nevertheless be two offenses. Why? Dichtiv, because the pasuk says, kol shochev im behema motumat, clearly prohibiting one such sexual liaison. Im eno inyan l'shochev, if it doesn't apply to the active, tanehu inyan l'nishkav, teach it according to the more passive. Va'afke rachmana l'nishkav b'lashon shochev, and the fact that the Torah words it for the passive in a more active language, namely ma shochev onesh v'hisir, the same way the active participant is punished and warned. Nishkav is here. So otherwise, the less active person is punished and warned. Aval haba al hasachor v'hevi zachar alav. In those situations, haba al habehema, or this example, v'hevi behema alav, or that example, bein la Rabbi Abahu, whether it's Rabbi Abahu, bein la Abaye, or Abaye, the Rabbi Yishmael chayav shalosh, okay, would be can have committed three offenses. The Rabbi Akiva would have committed the chayav shtayim, okay, would have committed two offenses, right? And now we begin to finish up. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Braita. Zachor lo asu bo katan kigadol. Okay, with regards to a male adult, okay, they did not make a distinction whether it was older or younger. Behema, with regards to an animal, asubak tanag kigadola. They did make the fact that both, regardless of whether it was an older or a younger animal, the prohibition. Mai lo asubo katan kigadol. What do we mean when we say they did not make the difference between an older or a younger? Amar Rav says Rav lo asu biat pachot mi ben tesha shanim.
They did make a difference.
Okay.
They did make a difference.
Well, I'm going to clarify it in a second. We're going to get to it in a second. Okay. What does it mean that they did not make a difference between younger and older? The Gemara is going to spell it out. Namely, Amar Rav says Rav. Okay. They did not lo asu bi'at pachot mi ben tesha shanim ki ben tesha shanim. Okay, that they did not make the difference between sexual activity on the part of somebody under 9 years old to that of somebody who was 9 years old.
So earlier
They did make a difference.
Okay.
They did make a difference. I'm reading it.
That's what Rav is saying. Okay, wait, we're not done with it yet. Okay, Shmuel says, however, lo asu bi'at pachot mi ben shalosh shanim. Okay, he said they did what they didn't clarify the difference between one 3 years old as if one is 3 years old. Okay, so b'mai kamifliki, what is the argument? What is they discussing here? namely, namely, Rav Sava, Rav was of the opinion, kol de ite b'shochev, ite ben nishka. Okay, that Rav was basically saying, okay, the point of view that to him there was no difference whether one was an active partner or a passive partner. Okay, v'chol de ite b'shochev, ite ben nishka. And one that okay is not okay. I'm going to clarify it in a second. And one that doesn't define the active partner. It doesn't define. It's not the same for the passive partner. Okay, so the implication is the following. Okay, if someone were to have a sexual act with an infant that's a toddler under 3 years old, okay, it would not be considered, okay, an actual sexual act. That's the point. On the other hand, okay, view is what age would you consider a young boy sexually capable of doing an act from 9 years and above, as opposed to what we might consider bar mitzvah age, for example.
But Rob says if you can't, that it's a two-way street. If it's the 6-year-old, it's
I'm not sure of it.
You're an adult, and you're not capable of an active act, but you're capable of a passive act.
Yeah, but definitionally, it's not clear with anyone under.
The question is,
Even
even at the passive act, you would still be guilty. Okay? All right, I'll finish up with an unfortunate story. Years ago, I did. Okay? Finish Kav. All right? I'm going to pick up tomorrow with Shmuel's view. Okay? Years ago, I was traveling through Europe with a friend, another male friend, and we were looking. We had seen most of the major sites, tourist sites in this particular city. Okay, I won't indicate which city it was. We decided for some reason we're going to go to a movie. Okay, we don't know what the language in the language. on the marquee, but we saw it was a movie. We walk into the movie, okay, and we paid our money, walk in the movie, and after about 5, 10 minutes of the movie, we realized that this was what we would call today pornography. Okay? So, of course, we got up and left the movie. All right? Okay. But the point that I'm simply saying is that what surprised us was that this was a normal theater, okay, not what we would call, let's say, 42nd Street Broadway, for those who are familiar with New York City, okay, or other places, all right, and this was part of the fair there in the movies.
That was in the days before they had the ratings.
Okay, it could be, it could have been. This goes years back, quite a number of years back. Okay, but all I'm simply saying is that it gives you a sense, the fact that what you hear is other stories or other situations. Okay, story is not unknown that among maturing Arab males, okay, there's not, in order to, because of the negativity associated in the Arab community with male homosexuality, it's not uncommon the supposed rumor that some of them will use animals to release their sexual needs.
They say farms, the girls are farms. They're sexual.
Anyway, so not that that's the best story that I could tell, but it simply reflects the fact that the Chazal were familiar with the human condition. That's
Catherine the Great. That's the history.
The horse fell on her, yeah. But the thing is, Catherine the Great, the
Anyone
rumor
who
is,
gives for $5 for
the horse
who
fell
would
on
like to
her.
contribute, don't look like homosexuality with an animal labor. If one does, the other one
I don't have a degree in zoology, Bob. I really
That we
can't
just
say.
went through a whole lot that they both get stealing. Learn and also see is